Good morning, everyone, and thanks again, first and foremost, to Farming Smarter. It's really great to be back here. I did speak here once before, about 4 years ago, when I was working as a research economist with Alberta Agriculture, so it may have taken Ken about that long to get over the hangover that he had hearing from me. So I'm very happy to be back, and again, I am the Policy and Program Specialist with Alberta Pulse Growers, so I do a number of things. Of course, I do a lot of policy outreach and advocacy along with the other commissions that you saw today in the Alberta canola video with Team Alberta. We also do a lot of work with our national partner Pulse Canada. I also do a lot of extension work with a lot of the other extension staff throughout the 4 major cropping commissions, and I work on grower relations as well. So I really love coming out to trade shows such as this one that Farming Smarter puts on alongside their conference. You'll also see me at AgriTrade, Ag Expo, and as well Farm Tech, our big conference that we co-host with the 4 other commissions. So today I'm going to be talking about our Plot to Field project, and I guess as a little bit of an introduction, I'm going to roll a short video, about 3 minutes.
A lot of agriculture is reliant on good information, and it's important for producers to have good information to ensure they make good decisions as far as whether they purchase products, how they apply those products, and whether or not they should even use certain products.
Our Plot to Field project is essentially taking what we believe to be great small plot research and scaling it up to the field level. Well, our first year we started off with peas, and we wanted to look at a project that we could use that is fairly simple, and that is seeding rate. To look at what are the differences in seeding rates in plant stand establishment and how that can impact yield. We're also going to be running the economics to look at what are the seeding costs, to know that if you have say a 5 or 10% yield benefit, what is also the savings if you're to decrease your seeding rate.
We're kind of at the end of the season where we're going to find out if the yield differs at all between the various treatments of low, medium, and high density seeded peas. This year was essentially a test of the protocols to ensure that all the written protocols we had could be followed, and allowed us to be successful at least in collecting good data this year.
We're excited to see the data and to see the data coming off our weigh wagons to see what those differences are.
Well, the ultimate goal again comes back to we need producers to believe in the data in order to elicit some changes in maybe what they're going to use or how they're going to do things. Historically, I would say producers have a little bit of skepticism with small plot data because it's in very small little patches. A drill that seeds for a small plot is 4 feet wide by 30 feet long. And a producer would like to see that we're looking at 60 feet wide by, half a mile long. And I think it's a valid, reason for a producer to be a bit skeptical. I think by the end of this, what we're hoping is that we'll be able to take small plot data where we get some clear trends and or significant differences in treatments or the things that we change, and then get it to the field scale and then be able to show and demonstrate that conclusively with field scale research to back that up. That'll give the producers more comfort that this data is solid and you can make $1 million decision on if you have to.
Why is research important? It's basically the scientific understanding of why we do what we do. And it's so important to invest in research. For Western Canada and Alberta to be and to continue to be a competitor, we need to push the boundaries of what we can grow with less inputs. And this is just one of many research projects that Alberta Pulse Growers has in play that is looking to improve the profitability for Alberta Pulse Growers, to continue to look at ways to do more with less, and also to inform the farm community and the membership that their levy dollars are being put to use and to good use in order to ensure that we have a profitable growing environment for pulses.
So there you go, there's my 3 minutes of fame, so now I can check that one off. What I would really like to do today is to go through the whole process of how this project came about and why Alberta Pulse Growers, our board of directors, our research committee, and as well as our entire team are behind this project. So we're going to start off here. Again, thanks again to Farming Smarter for having us out to the conference. And I'm going to discuss about how we came up with this whole concept. And it was through a vision, and that's to build a robust field-scale protocol that can be applied to individual farms and potentially even individual fields out there on your own operations. What we also wanted to look at is trends at the field scale and even anecdotes that we hear from producers in passing, if those can be re-examined at a small plot level with all of the controls in place. So this isn't just a one-way track of scaling up small plot research to the field scale, but it's also looking at combining all of the collective information from our membership and feeding that into the research projects that we fund. Again, this is also a way that we can field-proof or truth research questions for your own farm. So in year one is the most important year because that's where you're actually setting yourselves up for success or learning from your failures. So we wanted to make sure that we developed a strong team, and this includes, and we'll go through the team, we needed to determine our research question for our first year, and of course the most important thing was building our protocols. Our protocols include many different elements, and we're going to go through them, and they are put in place that we can serve a number of research questions that we may even come back and revisit throughout the year. And also for confidence, we want to make sure that we have multiple site years so that we have statistical analysis and to ensure that we have statistics that can actually be statistically relevant, so to speak. And we heard Ken mention this year about 8 site years of data. Well, after this first year, we have 8 site years of data. Next year, actually we have 8, yes. Next year we hope to have 17 on this same question across 3 different regions. So here's the team. Again, this started with our Alberta Pulse Grower board. They had tasked Dr. Jen Walker, our research scientist, myself, as well as our executive director, to come up with a way to put a team together that could address some of these issues. And we'll get back to why we're actually looking at plot to field and why we believe it's an important part of our research. So I've mentioned Dr. Jen Walker, myself. We also had Debbie, who was serving as our data manager, administrator, as well as serving up all the contracts with our contracted agronomists. We have listed there the agronomists J.P. Pettyjohn, who you saw in the video, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with Rob Dunn, who is actually supposed to be co-presenting with me today as well, but he's actually off to a soil science conference up in Edmonton today. And Ken King. Now, the 3 agronomists here that we have listed are among the top agronomists in the province, and all 3 of them we have on a 3-year contracted basis to help us. And each one of those agronomists are responsible, I guess, for working very closely and bringing to us our 9 technicians. So we have 9 technicians, and these are folks like yourselves. They're real grassroots producers. These producers also happen to be some of the most innovative producers in the province, and they're often the ones that neighbors are peeking over the fence to see what they're doing. And again, the last group on our team are the 6,000 or almost 7,000 growers across Alberta that are now growing pulses. And we rely on you for your input in regards to where you want to see research done. So for those of you down in the south, we have a picture of our 3 technicians. You may know some of these people. There's Kent Sandy, there's Doug Clemens, and there's Josh Frank Hauser. That's part of the Lamb Farm Group. I've had the privilege of meeting all 3 of these producers, and Doug and Josh on multiple visits to their sites, etc. And I just surveying through the crowd, I don't see any of you in the crowd today. However, let's see. Oh, there we are. Excellent. We have one of our technicians here in the crowd, so good to see you, Kent. And this is really important, that we build this relationship with our technicians, and they have been proven this year already to be, the most valuable part of our team. So here are where the sites are located, and you can see that we have 3 in southern Alberta, 2 in the, brown soil zone and 1 in the light brown soil zone. We also have 3 up in the black soil zone that Ken King is working closely with, and we had 2 of the 3 sites seeded up east and west of Edmonton with J.P. Pettyjohn. So those are the sites and the locations throughout the province where we, in our first year, had put this project into play. The protocol is where we had to spend quite a bit of time because each site has unique considerations and these can't be overlooked. Also the equipment widths, the field shapes, setting up buffers for plot edges. This is very important for us to get it right. And of course, all the different equipment widths did pose a challenge because it's really tough to have uniform plot design for all of our technicians and cooperators. So we had to go and get all the equipment widths, including row spacing on equipment, look at how that was going to overlap. So each cooperator or technician has a different type of site design. You can see here we have a picture of Doug's site up, and you can see the 3 reps side by side are 9 strips, and the strip size was actually 80 by 170 feet. So each one representing about 3.1 acres. We also needed to look at, I guess, direction of travel, whether or not you could have spray tracks running through if they had to be at 90 degrees. We did not want to have one, I guess, plot that would have travel through it, et cetera, to throw off any type of analysis, et cetera, or impact our data. So it did take a little while. And one of the biggest things is the importance of calibration of equipment. And this year especially, it was really important for our seeding and harvesting to figure that out. In other years, we may be looking at other research questions that will cover spraying, perhaps timing, etc. And this is important too, to make sure that we have our technicians to come in for a clinic where we may have Tom Wolf out to make sure that all of our technicians have the proper protocols in place to ensure that all of their equipment is calibrated properly. We looked at things like seed lots. There are a lot of questions about, do you have to use the exact same certified seed lot for all of your cooperators? And the answer was simply no, it's not the case. But what we did have to have was a standardized seed lot across our single technician's entire plot design. We also looked at the varieties that we were going to grow, and of course we did go with a yellow pea and meadow, and I'll mention that further in a little bit. We also looked at weed control, fungicide application, desiccants, and the important thing was that we decided that we needed to standardize across individual technician plots, but not necessarily all technicians. We also looked at standardized collection of weather and rainfall data. We also went through the issues of nodule assessments, general plant health and observations, and generally it was our agronomists that were tasked with this. So it was weekly observations, recording local weather at those places, etc. We also looked at weigh scales and combine yield data. We found even though some of our combines were calibrated and all of the instrumentation was correct, we still saw a large discrepancy between what the yield data was actually reporting and what we were weighing in the weigh wagons. So again, this is in order to compare and to proof to see how accurate our yield data was. Samples collected from each and every plot, we're testing them for quality, and of course we're standardizing them for moisture. So here you can see Doug out calibrating beforehand. And of course, they learned something on Doug's site, and that is that the 1,000 kernel weight was actually off by 15 to 20%. So it's important that they had the foresight to go through all the calibration to ensure that we could hit those target densities. So data collection, this was a big part of my job, I guess, is figuring out all the types of data that we were going to collect. And the data was standardized, and the collection rather was standardized, and we are getting a lot more data than we actually need. This data is actually 2 sides of an 8.5 by 11 Excel spreadsheet that can be printed, and all the cells fit nicely so that you can, as an individual producer, go take this data sheet, use it and fill in all of those sites. Of course, in Excel, it makes it very easy for us to take it, to put it into different types of workbooks and to use that data. And the thing is that we're collecting way more than we need because we're wondering if we can go back and overlay other research questions onto that collected data that we have. For instance, timing of rainfalls for pod filling in peas, or looking at other questions that might come about in regards to the entire operation. Here you can see a few of us out and looking at some of the plots as well. So again, year one research question, not necessarily the sexiest research question that there ever was in regards to seeding rate and plant density. We went back and looked at the literature and looked at Alberta Pulse Growers' own recommendations as well as Alberta Ag and Forestry recommendations for a target seeding rate and plants per square foot or plants per square meter. And this is actually based on 1990s research that was done under conventional tillage, which is generally not the case for the majority of production practices here in Alberta. We again looked at meadow peas, and we were targeting 3 different rates. Those rates were at a low density at 4 to 5 plants per square foot, medium target rate at 7 to 8 plants per square foot, and a high target rate at 9 to 11 plants per square foot. The other thing is not all of our technicians have the same spacing for their drills, so it was important for us to be able to go back and look at exactly how many seeds per row foot that we were targeting to ensure that whether you're on an 8-inch spacing or a 12-inch spacing, that we had comparable target rates. So what did we monitor in that data? Well, we had a lot of stuff, and I've talked to you about some of it. We had weekly field checks, and our agronomists were out there measuring the following: emergence, nodulation, first flower date, disease incident, pods per plant, and looking at general maturity. We also looked at rainfall, growing degree days, and even did our available soil water calculations to ensure that you know, we were setting up for success or knowing how much was available before planting. Here you can see in the south, we had a lot of challenges last year. This is looking at the average daily mean temperature, so it gives you an idea of where we're at in growing degree days. Ken had also talked about this in regards to how hot of a scorcher it was, and you can see that in parts of southern Alberta we had a lot more heat or intensive heat over this 90-day period, the warmest in 50 years in a lot of cases, and in some of the lighter red is the warmest in 25 years, so a very hot growing season this year. And when you look at the precipitation as well, there were areas of the province, I think Vauxhall was mentioned earlier, MD of Tabor, you can see there's that little red spot, but also south of Calgary was some of the driest conditions we've ever seen on record. So we did have some challenges in the south. And what did we learn? So, challenging year and growing condition. These are at the 3 sites here. So you can look at the estimated stored water at planting in millimeters. At the Claresholm site, we were pretty bang on. You can look at rainfall, planting to maturity in precipitation. Even though Claresholm did start off at about normal, they had a very challenging year with only 77 millimeters of rainfall. And that's only about 42% of their normal amount. So very challenging at that site. The other 2 sites, a little bit better. Moss Lee was down a little bit. And here for available water, you can see over the growing season, it varied a little bit, and the percent normal of growing degree days, you can see for all of our sites, it was a lot warmer than normal. And that was the wrong button. There we go. Here we go. We have some preliminary data. We haven't been able to go through all of the analysis just yet. We did have one member of our team I didn't introduce, and her name is Jagrup, and she has come on just recently and taken over the project since Debbie was actually hired on just a few months after we hired her, so she found another job. So we're going through all of our analysis at this point, but here's some early analysis from the southern and central sites that we looked at. And you can see that our yellow pea yield standardized at 16% moisture. In central Alberta, the Knee Hill 1, Knee Hill 2, and Mountain View sites, you can see that there's a little bit of difference in between the low, medium, and high. And Knee Hill 2 especially, you had a much higher, I guess, yield in the one case. Now, when you have a lot of available moisture, it doesn't necessarily, a higher seeding rate, it doesn't necessarily transcribe into higher yield. And we've actually seen in some of the lower planting sites that you're getting a higher yield. Now, the one thing we did have at all 6 of these sites that we compared was very good weed control. And that can be an issue if you have a lower plant population or a lower plant stand. So again, this is preliminary data. We haven't been able to run all the stats yet. And again, this is 6 of the 8 sites that we have, and the other 2 sites we're still waiting to compile and tabulate some of that data to add to our group. Moving forward, again, we have to finish going through all of this data and looking at it. And we are going to be doing economic analysis because this is really important. And you saw myself talking about this, commenting about it in the video. If we are seeing comparable yields at the low versus a medium or high target seeding rate, then it may very much make economic sense in order to target the lower rates, as seeding costs for yellow peas can be quite high in regards to the amount of pounds or bushels per acre. And Jonathan, I'd be happy to talk about bushels and where we brought that over in regards to measurements. But absolutely, we're going to do this economic analysis and look at the seeding rates and costs. We're going to augment our data with more site years and potentially new growers. Every time we bring up this plot to field project, there's a lot of growers that come up and say, I'm doing test strips in my field and I'm doing trials for different companies, and I'm really interested in what Alberta Pulse Grower is doing. And we're also looking at our next research question for next year. We've already had comments about lentils here in the south, and that there's been a lot of questions on watering schedules. We've had some producers that have had excellent success with lentils, hitting yields above 80 bushels an acre on red lentils under irrigation, and some that are under irrigation but may turn the water a little too heavy and end up hitting that 30 to 40 bushel yield. So we're looking for our next research question, and we're relying on growers such as yourselves to approach us and talk about some of the things that you want to evaluate. We're also going to be working at improving our protocol. We know that we've had some mix-ups in our first year. We're excited for our meeting coming up in January, where we'll have all of our growers, our agronomists, and the rest of our team together to talk about our key learnings and working at achieving this protocol. I often get this question too, and I'm sure I'll get it again today, is why plot to field? And I'm going to stick it to the federal government and the provincial government here in Alberta just a little bit, because we have, over the last 2 decades, seen an erosion of government funding and research capacity. We're very fortunate in Alberta that we do fund a lot of scientists that are excellent in their field. However, as Ken has talked about already, we're losing funding, key funding for research like ACIDF. And Alberta Pulse Growers, our board, has recognized this, and we are setting out to ensure that that erosion of research capacity doesn't keep progressing. We've engaged Rob Dunn, for instance. Many of you know him. He's worked closely with Farming Smarter in the past as well, and continues to do so. We want to make sure that Rob is still around to be able to give producers the best information possible. The federal government themselves, they had many vacant positions in entomology that were finally filled, and we're very happy to see that. But we do have concerns about the erosion of our research capacity in the province. And you can tweet that out too and put my name on it. I know I'll get in trouble, but who cares? So determine how producers can conduct research most efficiently, effectively, and economically with applied results. This is important as well, because it is expensive. Small plot research is not cheap, and it takes a lot of willingness for producers to put levy dollars into it. As you've heard JP mention that producers can sometimes be critical of it, and it is so important. I'm going to get to that about small plot research. But our big vision is to give producers a manual on how to answer their own research questions and on their own fields, and compare that research with their peers. Once we set up this protocol, we hope that producers will be able to take questions that they have and assess them on their own farm and compare it. Send it to Alberta Pulse Growers, and we will be able to help tabulate these multiple site years of information. And we think that there's a huge potential in this project. We know there is. Saskatchewan Pulse Growers announced that they're rolling out a similar type of program. Manitoba has been doing some complicated strip trials with their producers, and we see some of this research happening in the US as well. And this is more than just a test strip or product verification. This is hopefully going to become the real deal of how research can be done. But what plot to field is not, and I'm going to emphasize this, is not a replacement for small plot research. Small plot research is the best way to make sure that we can control the variables in the field and make sure that we are answering at the most scientific level those research questions. And we see this as being compatible with small plot research. Again, it's a two-way streak of great small plot research that's being done in places and organizations such as here in Lethbridge with Farming Smarter, and ways that we can scale this up to field scale and look at field proofing a lot of the great work that's being done in small plot research. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. I see I'm 5 minutes before lunchtime bell, so if anyone has questions, fire away. Well, I'm sure you'll have questions perhaps later on, and I'm here both days, so you can find me at lunch, or I'll also be over at the Alberta Pulse Growers modest booth with our one poster. So I hope to rub shoulders with you again here over the next day and a half. So thanks again.
You know, of course, the reporter always has to have a question or two, but what kinds of a response did you get, you know, story-wise from the farmers? Were they excited about seeing this work and actually kind of analyzing the results? You know, did you get some really cool response from some of your participants?
You know, I've had the opportunity to talk to a couple of our technicians, and I think generally they were very happy and pleased with being able to participate in this type of work. And I think along the way, the biggest thing is that we're all learning from each other. We're learning about different types of instrumentation and how to make sure that you've properly, I guess, set up your combine yield monitors. It's not a simple process. It takes an hour or so to get that done, right? How to have I guess, acceptable harvest losses, and that's something that we're working on as well to make sure that we refine for next year, is to make sure that all those settings are done. But, you know, the best thing is having producers come up and say, you know, we're really interested, we're not always sure when we're setting up test strips or field trials if we're doing it correctly, and it's going to be really great to have this type of a protocol set up. So, thank you.
Good, okay, any other questions, or do you want to catch? Yep, we got one here, go ahead. There is a mic right there, or if you're really loud, I guess we can hear you from there.
I'll try and speak loud. I was wondering, is there any research going on, like for other crops like chickpeas and even lung beans and that sort of stuff, like new pulse varieties? Is there any research going on?
Okay, the question was on expansion of varieties for some of these plot to field type research.
So in regards to the plot to field project itself, this year we focused just on yellow peas. However, again, I alluded to the fact that there is a lot of interest, especially from this area in southern Alberta, for next year to look at lentils specifically. In regards to Alberta Pulse Growers as a whole, yes, we are conducting specific research projects targeted towards lentils. We also have some funding looking at the potential of mung beans as well. So there is small amounts of funding going to, I guess, some of our smaller acre pulse crops. And again, that's something that, you know, is not necessarily, it's a nice luxury we have because, you know, we're not just like canola, wheat, and barley where we have one crop. With Alberta Pulses, we already have 6 different pulse crops, including 5 or maybe even 6 classes of dry beans, correct me if I'm wrong, that are being grown. So we do have a lot of different pulses under our purview, and we are trying to make sure that we allocate levy dollars to research in those fields. We also have a research magazine so that if you are a grower, we've published all of the research that Alberta Pulse Growers has been involved in the past year or so. So if you haven't received one, you're welcome to give our office a call or drop us an email, and we'd be happy to send one your way.
Okay, any other further questions? All right, well, I will thank you again, Nevin, and look forward to hearing more about your exciting research results in coming years. Thanks again.